Hey, what's up, guys? Chapter 12, Physical Geography of Europe. We're going to talk about that today. Get through this PowerPoint. We got numerous PowerPoints to follow up over the next few days, so make sure you check in Edmodo every day because Edmodo is your life, and a quiz soon to follow. So, hope you enjoy it. See you. Most of these things we talked about in the last few days or last week when we did our physical maps, and then this week as your stamp sheet, you're going to see these things a numerous amount of times. So, hopefully you learn it as we go through it. Europe, a land of peninsulas. It's a peninsula with a bunch of peninsulas is the best way to say it. The northern peninsula, the Scandinavian, made up of Norway and Sweden, with water on all three sides of it. Norway, we talked about the fjords and those big steep U-shaped valleys that now are filled with seawater that were formed by glaciers as they melted and ran through many years ago. Okay, these fjords are natural harbors used for fishing, boating, and different things like that as they make their way to the sea and back. So, very important waterway for the Norwegians. Other peninsulas, the Jutland, which is up by Denmark, most of Denmark, across from the Scandinavian peninsula. And then we have our peninsulas in the south, the Iberian, the Italian, and the Balkan. Iberian has Spain and Portugal on it. Italian is made up of Italy. And the Balkan Peninsula bordered around the Adriatic, Mediterranean, and Aegean seas. You find the Balkan Mountains. You find the Balkan Peninsula. Islands of Europe. Great Britain, Ireland, Iceland, and Greenland. Those are the major islands of Europe. There are many small ones, but those are the big ones. Iceland and Greenland, settled by the Scandinavians way back in the day. And people have also settled on the smaller islands. Most of these are in the Mediterranean, Sardinia, Sicily, Crete, or some of the smaller islands in the southern part of Europe that we haven't talked about too much. All of the islands depend on trade for survival. That should be obvious. They don't have the capability to produce everything they need, so they have to trade with others to get their products. Mountains. We've talked about the mountains before. The most famous of mountain chains in all of Europe is the Alps. It covers many different countries, parts of it, different countries: France, Germany, Switzerland, Austria, Italy, just to name a few. The Alps cut off Italy from the rest of Europe. Very influential as far as weather patterns are concerned in Europe. Very important part of Europe and the history of Europe based on its location. The Pyrenees cut off Spain and Portugal from the rest of Europe. That's right there between Spain and France. And the Apennine, however you want to say it, however you can remember it, goes right down the middle of Italy, kind of divides it into half, or east and west sections, the spine of Italy, so to speak. And the Balkan peninsulas cut off the Balkan Mountains, cut off the Balkan Peninsula from the rest of Europe, and isolates groups of people away from the others in Europe, which makes them different as far as ethnic groups are concerned. Uplands, hills, or very low mountainous areas that contain mesas or high plateaus. That's what that is. Meseta is the big central plateau of Spain. And you see the ones that are very similar to that. And then the Massif Central, which we've talked about, both of those, in France. The rivers, very important, transporting goods and brings people and ideas together. The biggest one, Danube, flows through the heart of Europe, touches 9 countries and goes west to east, covering 1,700 miles of land. Okay, and it runs into the Black Sea in the far eastern side of Europe. The Rhine River goes 820 miles and flows north to the sea and to the North Sea. The plains areas contain parts. The European plain is the biggest in Europe, the most productive as far as a product is concerned. You can farm it. Very fertile area, one of the more fertile areas in the world. And it takes up a big part of Europe. France, Belgium, the Netherlands, Denmark, Germany, Poland. Stretches a long way east and west. They're flat. They can produce a lot of food. However, they are very easy to invade for conquering armies at any point in time in history. So that would be a downfall, obviously. 33% of Europe's land is suitable for farming, mostly in the North European plain. And one of the things that is produced for energy is the peat, which is a partially decayed plant matter, and they use that for fuel. Resources: 2 natural resources found in Europe: coal and iron ore, used to develop steel and other products through Europe. There's good with that, obviously, at least heavy industry, industrialization, but also there are some negative consequences to these resources, and that's pollution being a big part of it. Other natural resources of the area: oil and natural gas, which we found in the North Sea. Major oil resource for Europe and the rest of the world. The climate in Europe: a lot of it's marine west coast. This expands from Spain to France to Germany and into the western part of Poland. They have a warm summers, cool winters, fairly decent weather. The North Atlantic Drift is a current of warm water that flows from the tropics, and it flows near Europe's west coast. And then the winds that come off of this go inland for a pretty good ways until they hit the mountains. And with this North Atlantic Drift and the winds that come off it, it is responsible for keeping the climates of these areas fairly mild. The climate extends from southern Spain all the way to France, through Italy, into Greece, and parts of the Balkan Peninsula. I'm talking Mediterranean now. Summers are hot and dry, clear and sunny skies. The winters are moderate and wet. Why is this climate much better than the lands to the north? Very simple: the mountain ranges. They block the cold north winds. Those winds come down, they hit the Alps, and they're done with. Okay? They're not affected by these winds because of the Alps. And with the absence of those, especially like in the southern part of the Mediterranean, we have the Sirocco winds coming in, hot, steady south wind that blows in from North Africa. Comes up across the Mediterranean Sea into southern Europe, and that is responsible for their pretty nice climate. Some of these winds carry moisture from the sea, and others carry dust from the desert. Some of the crops that are grown in the Mediterranean area: citrus fruits, your olives, your grapes, your wheat, things like that. And a lot of the beaches in the southern Mediterranean area attract many tourists, which is a very big part of their economy in that area. Land of the midnight sun: we're talking about far north Scandinavia, up above around the Arctic Circle area. No trees grow there. The ground's frozen year long. Winter nights and summer days are very long. And sometimes during a particular time period, because of their location, during the winter sometimes there is absolutely no sunlight. It gets dark, and it gets kind of not dark. In the summertime, there's time periods where there's absolutely zero darkness. The sun's always out. Obviously not as bright, but at certain points in the day, but it's still out. The region is known as the land of the midnight sun. This particular slide talks about flooding issues in the Netherlands, mostly because of the land being below sea level, similar to New Orleans. So they try to build things to help prevent these massive floods. Polders, we've talked about this, you read about it. 40% of the land, excuse me, 40% of the land that make up Holland was once under the sea. So they have to find a way to get that land back. So they make these polders, which is land reclaimed by diking and draining. Okay, we've talked about how they make these things, making these huge kind of seawall deals within the water, sucking the water out. And now how we have this land that we can use for various things. Waterways: Venice, Italy. 120 islands make up the city of Venice, the largest San Marco and Rialto. The Grand Canal flows between these two islands. The best mode of transportation in Venice is to walk or take a boat. The city began as an escape for people from invaders. And they stayed there throughout the time, established a settlement, and now because of trade, Venice has continued to grow. However, the problem is it's sinking. Why? Wood was piled to help support the structures above it. So we have these structures on top of the surface of the water, and below are these huge, large log things. The weight of the buildings is too great, and it suppressed the underlying ground, meaning it's driving them further in the ground. The sea level is rising, and then we talked about pollution issues kind of chipping away at those pieces of wood as well. Other problems: severe pollution, including industrial waste, sewage, saltwater issues, all continue to eat away at the foundations of the buildings. Erosion is an issue. Increased amounts of seawater into the lagoon because of the erosion. Killer algae because of the agricultural runoff. It grows rapidly, dies, and decays. In the process of decaying, uses up the oxygen in the water. And because of this, we have a lot of deaths underwater. Deforestation is an issue. We know what that is, cutting down trees. It's been happening in Europe for many, many years, mostly because they use the wood for a variety of things. Acid rain. In the 60s, the black forest trees in Germany were losing their color and their needles and leaves. The reason for this, according to scientists, was because of the factories that were putting out stuff into the air. The sulfur dioxide, nitrogen emissions combines with water vapor and oxygen, comes back down. That's acid rain, effectively killing and damaging a lot of the trees in the Black Forest. That's the physical geography of Europe, at least the early part of it. Hope you like it. See you.